Hi everyone, it's the EnglishSimmer here, and this video is sponsored by KRAFTON as they reached out to me and wanted me to check out their brand new game that is currently still in very early development. It is a brand new life simulation game called inZOI. So I got my hands on inZOI for a limited time, and basically they just let us have free range of the game to check out everything that was already available in it, things that we would like to see in the future, and they also wanted me to make this video on it so that you lot could actually give your feedback, your hopes, your dreams, everything that you would love to see in a brand new life simulation game in the comments below. And hopefully I give you all enough information so you lot can go away, have a little think about what would make you enjoy this game. See what I did there? See what the developers did there? I can't take credit for their name. We're gonna start off where you start off in the very beginning of the game, which of course is a classic character creation. I have to say, when I heard realistic art style, I was a bit like, ooh, like how is this gonna look in a life simulation? Is it gonna like toe the line between like realistic or uncanny valley? I can firmly say I actually really like the art style. I have been a firm believer that I would really like a life simulation game that sort of has the modern graphics of like next gen. So I'm thinking like Spider-Man, I'm thinking Life is Strange True Colors, and I honestly really feel like inZOI hits that mark for me. I would not like to be staring into the eyes of a Zoi if they look like they could jump out at the screen at any given opportunity. However, with the graphics that are included, I definitely do have slight concerns. I do feel as if it could age, and not in the sense that like the graphics could age very quickly, because I do feel like it feels quite current. Now I don't know whether that's going to be the case when this game does eventually get its like full release, but I do think it could age it in the sense that obviously English is used. The team are based in South Korea, so I've seen Korean out in the environment in the world, but with real languages being used, does that also mean that the clothing and like slogans and the way that the clothes are designed could actually age quite quickly? I will say the clothing style, I definitely felt as if there were a lot of like streetwear outfits, which I get, it's very like up-to-date fashion, but again, how long is that current gonna be? I also would just love to see more of a range of clothing. Obviously this is very early, so I don't want to make every point being like obviously they're gonna add more, because they will, but I would definitely expect upon full release way more diversity when it comes to the type of styling of clothes, definitely different fashions, because like I said, there is an awful lot of streetwear, and then there's some formal wear obviously because you can have jobs, but we'll get into that when we get to the gameplay portion of this video. You can actually layer your clothes, which is a really nice touch. This is something that I've wanted to see in life simulation games for a while now. So you can have like a t-shirt on, you can have your base layer, and then you can throw a jacket over the top, thank goodness. You also can use tools to actually change the colors of stuff, so you can change multiple colors on one asset, which obviously gives you the freedom to kind of create any color palette you want. You can mix and match. I will say there was a slight red flag for me. There was this little like AI filter thing, which you could pretty much type in whatever you wanted to type in and it would create like a pattern for you. One, this didn't work very well. I tried to type in corduroy and it kind of just plastered up an image of corduroy. I was kind of expecting it to apply like a corduroy pattern onto the clothing, but it definitely didn't look realistic. And also AI in general just scares me, and I kind of don't want to see it in my video games because it's kind of this huge unmoderated thing right now. You can change your Zoi's appearances using sliders. I will say I would just like to see the sliders be way more in depth than they currently are. I felt like the only way that I could really change the face was through the presets. I also realized that I couldn't change eyebrows, I couldn't change the eye color, so I'm always down down for more sliders, but they are there. And then more diversity is absolutely needed. Obviously, life simulation, I think the hair textures specifically didn't really look that great, especially afro textured hairstyles. I would definitely prefer the skin tones to be sliders just because I feel like you can have more of a dynamic range. And also the body size sliders need to be much better in my opinion. And then when it comes to personality, you can actually choose your traits in character customization. I quite like the traits that are on show within this game. They get 2 traits when they're a child, and then when they actually age up to an adolescent, they get an extra trait. I would like to choose my child traits. Mine actually just got assigned to her automatically when she aged up from a toddler. However, she did have 2 of the same traits as her mum, which I honestly kind of like if that was passed down, but I don't know if that was just completely random. And then they can have up to 5 slots by the time that they are a young adult. They seem quite dynamic when you're actually checking them out in the list, but I did soon realize that once I hopped into gameplay, the traits weren't like super shown off. All they really related to were the desires that my Zoi wanted to get up to. So I would definitely love to see these traits have more of an effect on relationships, how Zoi actually interact with each other. If they have like conflicting traits, I would like that to be represented in my gameplay and the way that they talk to each other and observe the world around them. But I do also feel like a lot of the personality panel that you actually see within gameplay should be moved into this character customization, because I for one didn't even know it was there when it came to gameplay until I actually got a little notification, and then I could add values, I could add the ambition, and I could finally see like the preferences that my Zois have. That to me is what makes a Zoi really a Zoi, so I would definitely like that in the character customization rather than having to go through all of that within gameplay. Next up, I'm going to talk about the world and the environment. Honestly, I was kind of shocked when I first got into it by how big the world was. I really wasn't expecting it for a game that is so early in its development have like a full sort of experience where I could create a Zoi and then I could go into the world and actually like walk around and interact with other Zoi and like see a fully fledged kind of city vibe. So it was pretty fun to explore, and even whilst my Zoi were just like walking through it, there were definitely some unique elements that I felt that I hadn't really played in a life simulation before now, which again I think is like a good basis. There is a gaming cafe in the world, there was a karaoke bar, and then even whilst my Zoi was just like chilling in a park, there were like claw machines, so they could just go over and like try and win a prize, which kind of felt realistic. Like it kind of felt like these things were kind of catching my attention and me just being like, oh, I'll just like pop into this little cafe. Like there's a tarot card reading cafe. I think it's a good base, but I definitely think they could take it further. So for example, I was actually living in a house and right next door there was like a kids play area. However, the child in the household couldn't actually interact with like the roundabout. It couldn't climb the climbing frame. I really would have enjoyed it if she could have just gone over there and kind of entertained herself like whilst her parents were at work. I just want them to take those unique experiences and like push them even further in the world. I will say, however, because it's open world, and maybe this is just because I haven't played an open world simulation game in a while, it does actually take a fair while to get around, which when my Zoi were trying to get to work, a lot of the times they were late because you have to like walk and then they have to take the subway and then they pop up the other side and then they have to continue walking. When I first jumped into the game, this little story popped up on my mobile phone and I was like, oh yeah, cool, like I can check out photography, like let me go to the park where this woman is expecting me. And then unfortunately, I think even by the time I had got to the park, it had been so long that she either wasn't there or I did like one interaction and then she had to run off really quickly. I did eventually get to meet the photography sim, and I am a big yes on those stories. I am always for more things for my character to do without it like being a career or something that I constantly have to direct them to. I like that people were reaching out to me being like, hey, here's my passion, I would like to share it with you. So please, inZOI team, continue working on those stories because I want to see like full-fledged story arcs with those characters. I did realize that some random people were reaching out to me, especially being very flirty when our relationship didn't really show that we had anything romantically going on. So I definitely think that needs some playing with and some tuning, but I actually actually really like people reaching out, and I enjoy them being able to invite me out to places. You can also invite them over to hang out with you. And I would just like to see that expanded further to actually make it feel like the world is continuing to live around you, such as being invited to birthday parties if we get them in the future. Also, sometimes when Zoi do text you to hang out, it actually doesn't come up with an image, which can be really confusing because you're like, okay, this is cool, but I don't know which person you currently are, and you have to like hover over all of them to see their names. And I also will say the camera angles right now are currently quite limited. I definitely have my preferences when it comes to how I move my camera around when it comes to games like these, and I really dislike a sort of static camera because of the issues that I was running into whilst my Zoi were walking around, which was the fact that the camera was actually clipping into like really tall buildings and I couldn't see them. And then I would also like tell them to auto go somewhere and they'd just kind of end up on like the side of a building, and then I didn't actually know where like the entrance was, which again just wasted even more time because I was just like trying to find certain things. Moving on to build mode, I honestly think this is the most restrictive part of the game in its current development stage. You can only build like one-story houses. There aren't like any stairs within build mode. However, there are stairs within other buildings that you can go to, like community lots for your job, etc. So I obviously expect that to be part of the further development, but it's definitely something that I would like to see, so I wanted to mention it. And you currently can only build homes, where I definitely, in like a life simulation game, especially in inZOI, because it feels like the devs really want this to be like a customizable game, but it just currently didn't feel that way because you can't like build community lots, and kind of what you have in the world is what you get. To encourage that customization, the devs have actually given you, again, options to change the colors of assets within build mode, which I really love to see. It means that everything can be cohesive because you don't have to just stick to the color swatches that are available in the catalog. You can change it to different kind of fabrics, you can change the colors, and you can do that with multiple elements of the same object. They also have a custom furniture option, which I assume again is just going to grow in the future, but for right now they had an example of chairs, so you could choose what like base chair you wanted and then what legs you wanted on them. There's not really a place for me to insert this in the video at any other point, so I want to just include it now whilst we're talking about customization. They actually currently have the option for you to move your UI around, which I just think is incredible. Especially as someone who creates content, I feel like that's so helpful to streamers or YouTubers who obviously we have like our face cams, and most of the time you have to like work around the game UI, and it's kind of like a puzzle piece of being like, right, where does my face fit that isn't really going to interfere with the game too much? Whereas in this, you can literally just like move stuff around, and then if anything changes in the options, you can actually just reset the UI to its default. I would definitely like an option to like pin the UI so that you're not accidentally dragging it around, because that definitely happened to me a little bit whilst I was playing the game. But very cool thing that I've never ever thought of within a video game. And finally, we are getting into the gameplay. The main portion, I feel, of any life simulation, actually that fully depends on what type of player you are. I'm gonna try my best to just like show off as much of the gameplay as possible. This is really the part where I just want more content. I always say that, but I feel like the more the better when it comes to a life simulation. Give us as many opportunities as possible, and I'm just gonna or I guess I should say deeper in this sense. And I will say I'm gonna put the emphasis on deeper, because from what I saw, it was pretty surface level, but again, this is very early in development. There are 8 needs that you need to look after when it comes to your Zoi. These are hunger, hygiene, sleep, bathroom, fun, social, recognition, and energy. I do quite like the energy is a different thing from sleep, because I feel like in real life those two things are very different. Like, you could sleep but not gain enough energy one night. I personally don't think those two needs should like go up at the same time. I will say it was quite easy to keep my needs up, although they go down quite fast. I know that sounds ridiculous, but for example, my hygiene could be like halfway, and then I could go send my Zoi to brush their teeth and it would go all the way back up to full. I personally don't think brushing your teeth should have that much of an effect. I personally feel like a shower or a bath could fill that. But then I was really struggling to like get my sleep up unless I sent them to bed really, really early. And then those 3 skills that I mentioned were art, speech, and fitness. The dev team have already assured me that there are others in the works, which again is just kind of the reason I got offered this sponsorship and the reason why you lot get to have your say. If there's any particular skills that you would love to see within this game, let me know. For example, there's a drum kit, but unfortunately ZOI currently can't play the drums. I think I would expect that to get up their art, or maybe they have their own skills for each instrument, which I think would be quite cool. And then also they may implement bands, which I'm just saying I'm always going to be here for. However, the limitations in the catalog right now seem very uneven. So for example, for the fitness skill, there was actually a ton of items for my ZOI to use. There was little dumbbells, which was really nice. I love smaller objects that you can just kind of have dotted around your home, where you can still get up a skill without needing like some big gym equipment, but also that big gym equipment was available to me if I wanted it to be. Whereas the art skill only really had like 3 gameplay interactable objects that you could get that skill up on. You know that I absolutely adore hobbies, so I could reel off a list of different skills that I would want to see here. I'm not going to, but just know I will give that feedback back to the devs. When it comes to interactions between ZOI, I will say I was slightly disappointed. Like I said, I feel like the traits kind of gave you an idea that ZOI were going to be really in depth and they would react differently in like conversations. And if you had 2 ZOI that had very conflicting traits, then they wouldn't get on super well. That unfortunately for me was not the case. I basically made complete opposites, or what I thought were gonna be complete opposites. But it was very, very easy to get their relationship to a very good level. I will hold my hands up and say it was also very, very easy once I started to do negative things to shift that to the complete other end of the spectrum, and they actually started like fighting and disliking each other. I will say I wasn't a huge fan of some of the animations. They just felt very, very aggressive. For kind of autonomous animations, I really wasn't expecting that feistiness from them. But unfortunately, once I actually started playing on 3 speed to try and age my baby up, once they started interacting autonomously again, they went right back to being perfect. Literally, it took like 1 day for them to get from the worst possible relationship that they could have had as a married couple to like the best possible relationship that they could have had. So I would love to see more depth when it comes to like interactions. I will say also, playing this the first time, and again, I might just need more time with this, I do think the categories are quite confusing. So currently there is love, friendship, and business. The business one was kind of the most confusing because once you actually started talking about business just to like any random ZOI, they didn't have to be in your workplace. Your ZOI didn't have to have a career to be able to interact in a business way with them. They could have the option to like ask to be co-worker, but then when I went to work, they weren't actually a co-worker. So I think business should be limited to those ZOI who actually are in your workplace, and like if you do ask someone to be your co-worker, then they then get accepted into your career and you start to see them at work. I also think that plays a role in ZOI being labeled properly. So for example, if you have a higher up in your work, I would love it if it kind of showed what position they were in your job, and then you could kind of suck up to them a little bit more to like help your work performance. I checked out the couple of careers that are currently available in inZOI. Good news is you have an active work day. You can go to work with your ZOI and then you can help them complete tasks throughout their day. I would like to see more of a range of tasks. Although after like my first day, I did just figure, hey, whilst I don't have like a work task up, how about I just go work on skills that are available to me whilst I am here? So in the firefighter career, that was obviously working on my fitness skill. And then in the entertainer career, that was also fitness and then also like singing and playing the guitar. However, I did notice that if I wasn't actively playing who was at work, they rarely did the tasks off their own autonomy, which I definitely would expect them to. And also, I have to say, I did quite like the realism. It took me a while when I had a task to work on my computer for like half an hour. I couldn't use like any of the computers around the office, but then I realized that there was actually a little like my seat above one of them, and that was actually like the one computer that I could use, which is actually very realistic. I do just think it needs to be a little bit more obvious. However, unfortunately, for all of you family game players out there, I did let my toddler age up into a child, and unfortunately, I could not do an active school day with my kid. Who knows? Maybe if enough of you want it, you could yell about it in the comments. And also, I did realize that some of the interactions that we could do definitely didn't line up with what I was kind of expecting, or like the animations I was expecting. Animations are definitely going to come further down the line. However, I don't think that some of those interactions should have been included unless there was an animation tied to it, or something that kind of gives the acknowledgement of that happening. So for example, I actually asked ZOI to go watch the stars, but they really just talked, and then I could just move on to the next interaction. I actually did have myself a little baby in this game because I did want to see how the sort of younger generations played. Babies and toddlers, they need a lot of work. You couldn't change their appearance whatsoever, and you also currently can't really do too much with them. The baby, you can basically like play and they kind of like giggle to themselves, and you can also have an adult interact with them and kind of like play peekaboo. It's a cute animation, but I would definitely expect to like feed babies. They don't have any needs currently, so I would definitely expect them to have needs in the future. Toddlers kind of just like crawl around your house. I would like it if you could like teach them certain things. My toddler actually, when it grew up, did have level 1 in the speech and the art skill, but I don't think there was a way to like get up those skills because the parent couldn't actually interact with the toddler. I could just click on the toddler as itself and then like sit and drink milk, but that also didn't get up like any of their needs. Their needs were completely static. I also would love it if you could like pick up your toddlers, take them out and about. Obviously open world is so good for that. And also, even if you don't want to take them out of the house, I did realize that my parents could literally just leave the toddler alone, absolutely unaccompanied in the house by themselves. I would love it if you could just like call a babysitter or like call one of your friends and family and be like, hey, I'm leaving the house, would you mind coming over and looking after the baby? And then they enter and actually take care of it. They obviously do have 10 preferences available to them, which you can actually change at any time. You can dislike something, you can be neutral on something, or you can love something. I did notice that one of my ZOI who love plants actually went over to plants a fair bit. So it definitely felt like the basis of autonomy was there, and them actually like hovering over to things that they like. I would love to see more of that for sure. I did have a fire. Unfortunately, there wasn't much repercussion to it yet, which you always know I would like to see consequences. But rest assured, ZOI can pass away. I just didn't see any of it within my gameplay, so therefore I'm not going to speak on it. And lastly, there's just some fine-tuning that I would add to gameplay itself. For example, the act of multitasking is so helpful in a life simulation game. I realized that people were coming over to my house, and then when they were actually on the computer or if ZOI were eating, we couldn't interact at all. So I definitely think the ZOI you are playing as should override maybe the other ZOI around you. And you've probably seen it throughout this video, but there is actually a schedule, which I like the idea of it in theory, but as it is right now, it was just kind of fully overriding me as a player and deciding where my ZOI was gonna go. So I just had to really keep like cancelling out of it. And there is a little tick box next to the days, which I assume actually turns off the schedule for that day. But again, I feel like that could be cool for family gameplay to like schedule chores or schedule a babysitter and actually have like a weekly schedule built up for your ZOI that you can also just cancel out at any time if your plans do change. Also, the game does have weather. You yourself can change it in director's mode, but it is also dynamic, so the weather can change from day to day without you actually having to play around with it. But that wraps up my first experience with inZOI and kind of my first feelings towards it. My instant reaction to what I actually got to play of this game, I do think there is a good basis. I feel like I hopefully got that across in this video. I know I obviously had like a lot of critiques, but also that's what the team are looking for. They're wanting to know what we want in a life simulation game and how we can see it actually fitting into this game. And even though I'm looking forward to like more and more content in inZOI, even just whilst I was playing what we had, I really thought this game has a strength in its realism. I feel like the team can really lean into that. For example, there's an interaction currently that doesn't actually do anything within the game, but an adult can go to a child and ask if they need an allowance. Like, imagine if we had a full banking system and children could have their own little like pots of pocket money that they do actually go to the cafe with on a weekend and spend on the grabbers. But it's not just the little features and details that the team want to know about, they also want to know what you expect when it comes to the price of this game, whether this game is going to be able to be modded or not, how they're going to release future content. All of those things they've asked for your lot's opinion on. So I hope this video was helpful. Definitely let me know in the comments what you think about everything that you have seen in this video. I know it's a lot. Trust me, I too felt overwhelmed. Not only am I overwhelmed by my real life, but I'm also overwhelmed by my life simulation. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Once again, big thank you to KRAFTON for sponsoring this video. Honestly, I feel honored that I got to get my hands on this game so early and like check it out and also help show the world inZOI. But please do not hesitate to leave all of your ideas, requests, no matter how out there they may be, whether it comes to how you want to travel around an open world, what you would like to be able to build, different customization, different settings that you want to see in the game. Think of this video and my comment section as a canvas, and you lot are just painting away happy little trees. But thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will speak to you all in my next one. Bye now.